Hello guys, welcome to my humble YouTube channel where I bring you fanfiction that will brighten your days. Before we start, a subscribe is greatly appreciated, and don't forget to leave a like and ring the bell icon so you won't miss exciting new fanfiction stories. The Saint of War, Tensura x DxD, by Kischur Chapter 10. Right after returning to the Pendragon estate, both Morgan and Seal then took off for the city, for both of them to wander about and see the sights of it all. Well, mostly Seal though, who wanted to look upon the famous great city of London. Of course they weren't alone in this endeavor, since despite Seal's immense power and skills, and with Morgan herself, like her namesake, as a powerful sorceress, they were still surrounded by bodyguards from all over, with some even on top of buildings and roof, while some blended in the crowd and pretended to be either tourist or does that just goes to somewhere else in the city. It was presence that Morgan hated, for the simple fact that she wouldn't even feel what it's like having fun with a friend that she just made for herself. As for Rimuru, he was already used to the attention that he got after making Siegfried go unconscious in their battle, so he didn't really mind people stalking him, but what he did mind was another person moving to his left. "Byleth, you didn't need to be a part of this, you know?" Seal asked his temporary personal maid. Byleth, who heard this, only looked down on the ground sadly and then asked, "You don't need me anymore?" she asked in a sad tone, that caused Seal to pause for a moment, before sighing. "Fine, you can come, but please be at ease at least," Seal replied back, while also retracting his earlier comment, not wanting to see a girl of her age be sad. To this, she just smiled quite happily, easily pleased by Seal's words, which did cause the two to smile as well, quite happy that she is happy. Byleth, a member of the House of Du Lac, the famous lineage and descendants of the Knight of the Lake, Lancelot du Lac. Because of Lancelot's immense guilt for his participation of being one of the key figures of the Kingdom of Camelot's downfall, Lancelot desiccated himself and his descendants to always follow the orders of the descendants of King Arthur Pendragon to atone for his sins. Because of this, the House of Pendragon has forgiven the knight because of his sheer loyalty to them and to their future members, with it being ranked as the second highest in the terms of nobility in Great Britain, with it only being second by the House of Pendragon. But despite that, however, they still exist to be the subordinate of House of the Pendragons to this day, with the current head and all of its current existing household members fully respecting their ancestors' decisions and pride as well. And with both Seal and Gibril arriving in the nation, the Pendragon household decided to hand over a temporary maid for Seal, in the form of Byleth du Lac, who is also the heiress of the House of Du Lac. And with her being the same age as that of Seal as well, he felt a kind of connection with her, since they are generally viewed as nearly the same thing, with two geniuses that evolved and became an enlightened human even before the age of 6, while also possessing great mastery over the blade as well. With Seal himself also confident that if it wasn't for him existing, Byleth would have been known as the most talented human to have ever been born, with him only having the title because he evolved before her by quite a bit of time. With that, the trio walked the streets of London, visiting all kind of places, with the most usual places are candy shops, restaurants and various other shops that one can buy food and snacks from. From there, both Morgan and Byleth learned of Ciel's quite huge sweet tooth, with him constantly buying various sweets en masse to eat later in the mansion. To the people of London, they merely saw a big sister that is taking care and spoiling her little siblings, and as for the nearby supernaturals that saw Seal and Morgan, they merely left the scene to go quickly informed of the happenings in London. Just outside of the city of London, there were a quartet of exorcists entering the city, with them wearing priest-like outfits, causing the still religious London to show massive respect to the priest and nuns that followed him, with the trio only giving them smiles and such, while also giving them their blessings and such. "Father Anderson, why are we in London?" one of the nuns asked, causing the man to hum and then looked at a certain direction of the city and then answered, "We're here for the young master by the orders of the higher-ups of the church." The man answered with a tone that suggested frustrations and tiredness, which was something that the nuns shared as well when they learned of their reason for arriving in this place. It is an open secret among the church that the church higher-ups hate Seal Tempest, for the simple fact that they believe that they're giving him special treatment, with them constantly using the time that Seal took 2 years in the Heavens Library for himself, despite it normally being 2 months only, and his own recent adventures to the Norse realm and his unrestricted access to the church's funds as well. Of course, the 4 of them was also skeptical of Seal himself from the start as well, but after witnessing Ciel's victory over Uriel, they completely sided with the angel's decision to focus solely on him. Because of the rising tensions and how close the potential of war, it is far more important to raise a single power that could change the tide of war, instead of focusing on the majority's improvement and still be defeated. It might be cruel, but in order to win the war or just simply survived, it is necessary to be cruel enough to survive and get result. With that, Alexander then turned towards his apprentices and then forwarded towards the Pendragon house. Let's go and see how powerful the young master has become. Beatrice, Jean, Apponia. Understood, Father Anderson. With that, the three then walked towards their destination, with the hopes of finding their young lord. In the Pendragon estate, currently, Seal was currently in a weapons storage of the Pendragon house, with him going around the armory and looking at weapons, or more especially guns, from pistols and assault rifles. With him grabbing every type of gun that was hanging around and then bringing them to a workstation, and then examined all of them, with the use of either magic or his own natural senses and knowledge about the subject. Byleth, who by this point was watching her temporary master worked, couldn't help but be curious and asked him what he was trying to do. Lord Seal, what could it be that you're trying to accomplish? If I could ask, of course. To this, Seal paused for a moment before answering. I want to recreate these weapons and then recreate them with the use of modern materials and machinery in the human world to sell them to Britain and to other countries that goes against Germany. Hearing this, Byleth couldn't help but look towards Seal in a surprised expression, which is the first time that she has shown such expressions before. I didn't know Lord Tempest likes money that much, she couldn't help but comment, since after all, if Seal was able to do just what he set out to do, then he would make mad cash simply because of how advanced the guns of the supernatural are. Seal, hearing that, didn't really reprimand her, since to an outside view, that would be the thing that they would first see as well after all. To this he decided to clarify a few things for her though. No, in truth, with me having full access to the funds of the church, I don't really care about money that much. The reason why I want to create weapons for humanity is for my goals for humanity itself. Your goals? Byleth asked, curious about Ciel's goals in life is, since after all it would be bound to be interesting. Yeah, I want to raise the technological level of humanity to the point that they surpass the supernatural world, so that they would acknowledge them as a whole and accept them to the supernatural side. What? Alexander couldn't help but said to himself, while watching Ciel's golden and rainbow aura flowing around him, he couldn't help but compare it to both Michael and Gabriel themselves in terms of purity and control. He couldn't help but snicker as well, while watching his apprentice looked upon the boy with blushing looks as well. Despite only being about 17 to 21 years of age, the trio couldn't help but blushed at the boy's beautiful and serene appearance. He truly is the son of Gabriel, the most beautiful woman in heaven, Alexander thought for himself, not really bothered by his student's current situation. Since after all, one can't actually control when and who they fall in love. Well anyway, if you girls are still love-struck, I will be meeting with him now. With that he then moved towards the boy, causing the trio to shook in realization and then hurriedly followed their master and teacher. Wait for us, Father Anderson. Seal, who was relaxing for a bit after his round of experimentation with the weapons, has sent Byleth away to bring him a few sweets and tea, but when he heard of the sound of footsteps, the voice of three girls and the partial holy energy that was walking towards him, he turned towards the direction and was met with a surprising group of exorcists. The one he was most surprised about was the woman with blonde hair and blue eyes. She wore a classical nun's outfit, but with the use of magic one could easily see that there is an illusion placed onto the outfit itself, with it hiding metallic pieces in the outfit, while also having a giant great sword on her back as well, with it being hidden with magic. Seal looked at her in extreme interest, causing said woman to blush quite a bit at his gaze being so concentrated on her. With that he then turned towards the rest, and much like the earlier woman, they interested him, but not as much as the earlier girl though. The second oldest of the nuns was a woman with long pale blonde hair and pink eyes, with her wearing the classical nun outfit, but unlike the earlier girl, there was no illusions around her, suggesting that she doesn't have armor atop of her nun outfit. The last one, who is also the oldest of the nuns, she has light brown hair and deep blue eyes, with her wearing the classical nun outfit, but like the youngest, her outfit is composed of an illusion of the classical nun outfit, but with the simple use of magic, Seal was able to see beyond the illusion. She was wearing a heavily modified nun outfit, with it emphasizing her curves and assets to the point that Seal even thought she was a succubus or have succubus or love deity's blood running through her veins, but sensing there wasn't, he could only conclude that she is easily humanity's most beautiful woman in the world. But after that, he then looked at the man, who was giving him a cheeky smile that gave him that is awfully similar to Siegfried's own smile that he gives him sometimes when he is either surrounded by girls or looked upon by girls. The man appeared to be in his late 20s or early 30s, with him wearing the common exorcist clothes, with him plentifully hitting quite a bit of bayonets on his person, not even bothering to hide them with magic. But when Seal looked at him, he merely froze for a bit, before looking at the man with interest in his eyes and smiling a bit, which caused the four to step back a bit at the smile. "You're quite strong. Peak enlightened. What's your name, exorcist?" Seal said, clearly impressed of the man's strengths, since it's not every day one could meet someone that has reached enlightened stage, and more than that, someone that has reached the peak of it to the point of no longer getting stronger from there. The exorcist, hearing this, then looked at Seal and then laughed. "Ha ha ha ha. You truly deserve the title of humanity's hopes and dreams. For you to be so young and be at the peak of enlightened stage, it's truly incredible." The man couldn't help but marvel at the boy before him. A kid that is about 7 years old and counting, is very much on his level of power, and from what he saw back in the day from his bout with Uriel and from what he could have learnt from the battle-hardened Norse pantheon, he was sure that even his own martial prowess was even better than his own as well. Seal, hearing this, couldn't help but chuckle a little. "He's quite skilled to realize that I am at least in the peak of enlightened stage, but not skilled enough to realize that I'm in the saint stage and growing." Seal didn't fault him for it, since in Temar's of Illusions, he learnt quite a bit of runes from both Jibril and Odin himself to allow him quite a mastery over illusion magic. But still though, he did look back to the youngest of the group once again, and he couldn't help but marvel at her. She may be the youngest, but in terms of mana to holy energy ratio, she is by far the best at converting her mana to holy energy. About 10% of her reserves are mana, while the rest is holy energy. The man, seeing Ciel's analytical look, then coughed for a moment to gather the attention to himself. "Cough cough, young Master Seal. It is finally nice to meet you in person. I am Alexander Anderson, and this 3 women are my apprentices, Jeanne d'Arc, Beatrice Bianchi and Apponia Ventura." Hearing the names, Seal was surprised, since after all, despite not being a part of The Exorcist and not hearing any news about them, he has at least heard of the name of Alexander Anderson. Alexander Anderson, the corp leader of the 7th Corps, and is regarded as the strongest exorcist to have ever exist. "What is someone of your prowess and renown in the Pendragon family estate?" Seal questioned the man, since despite the man's position, in terms of hierarchy positions, Seal is still higher, with him being the son of Gabriel and him being prioritized by the heavens themselves. Alexander, hearing the question, could only rub the back of his head before answering. "The higher-ups of the church has ordered me to take you in, believing that you are corrupting the angels themselves and want you dead, freeing the heavens of your corruption." Alexander answered and gave way to the very reason he was here, with his apprentices only looked down in shame at the orders that they were brought here. Seal, hearing that, could only looked at Alexander and then the nuns for a moment before answering himself. "And why did you reveal such a plot to me?" "Simple. You have a higher authority compared to the Pope." It was a simple reason, but it was reason enough as well, since after all he didn't really came here to kill Seal, since he believed in him and supported the angels, wants to prioritize the boy over them upon seeing what he could do. But now seeing him again, he couldn't help but think that the angels has made the correct decision in the matter, with his explosive growth being the sign of which says all the things that could only be said now. And with how pure his energy is, and with his entire mana reserves being holy energy, which is extremely impressive and a great show of talent and knowledge as well, since despite his old age, he could only make his entire mana reserves go to 50% holy energy and mana. Which is unlike of his own apprentices, who has even greater talent than himself, with Jean already surpassing him in that ratio of 1:9 mana to holy energy already. Seal, hearing the reason, could only waved off his hand at that, and didn't really bother to say anything to the group, since after all, if they did tried to kill him, he could have just as easily retaliated and killed them all as well, with him now being a saint and all, and with the various teachings that he got from Thor and Siegfried from their bouts as well. "Well, if you did came here to kill me, I will say this, you will die." Whoosh. Asterisk. Suddenly they all heard and sensed a fast approaching individual, and sensing its destination, all them except Seal readied for the confrontation, but when they all turned around, they froze for a moment when they saw the person that was heading their way. The person was a person that was not even older than 10 years old, with her having blue hair and a blue eyes, and with her wielding a holy sword that surpassed theirs and holding a serving tray on her left hand. The girl then slashed towards the group, which generated a huge holy blast towards them, causing the nuns to move to the side to not be hit, while Alexander only swiped his hand at the blast, completely destroying it, and with the use of his right arm, he grabbed hold one of his bayonets and then intercepted a slash at his neck. With that, the girl then run past him and then stopped right before Seal, and then giving him the serving tray, which holds various snacks and tea in it, with Seal taking hold of it. With that, the girl then turned around to then face off the group of exorcists. For your trespassing of the sacred home of the House of Pendragon, your punishment shall be death. As for the others, the girls was looking at the young girl in fear and shocked. Normally they would fawn over the young girl and her wanting to be a knight, but after witnessing the great feat of power that could have killed them, they couldn't help but just shiver in fright at the great show of power and near-death experience that they just have. Alexander on the hand wasn't really fazed with the blast. With him living for centuries by this point, he has already came to realize that there would always be a genius among geniuses in every generation somewhere in the world, and with his worldly experience, he could only look at the girl with awe. My word! This world truly is quite big. If it weren't for the young master, I'm sure that she would have been hailed as humanity's hopes and dreams instead, Alexander thought while looking at the girl's posture and position with the blade and her inner manipulation of her mana, holy energy and aura. She's good. In fact, she's near CL's level of manipulation before he entered the library. That was Alexander's conclusion. Despite the comparison, that was actually an incredible comparison to do in this very situation for her, since despite being a literal 5-year-old back then, Seal already has a monstrous level of energy manipulation in him, with him even mastering every basic form of combat down to perfection itself. It's just that, it doesn't appear that way simple because of how little Seal actually cared to compare himself to others, and the people he fought in the Norse realms are either overwhelmingly weaker than him or are immensely more powerful than him. Add in that she herself is an enlightened one in the lower upper stage, she truly is quite the genius. She might even reach the peak of enlightened stage in just a year's time, Alexander thought, jealous of the Dulac family for producing such a warrior and the Pendragon household for having it. A shame that she isn't an exorcist, we really need such talents in our ranks. Oh well, can't complain since we would have Seal for ourselves in the future soon anyway. Alexander thought before turning to his apprentices who has readied themselves for battle and then to the girl before ordering his apprentices. All you, try to battle the Dulac, try your best. Yes, Father Anderson. When the trio heard of his words, they couldn't help but shook, but considering that war is soon to approach, they simply decided to accept the order in order to acquire experience in fighting someone of her level. Byleth hearing this, then straight away rushed towards the strongest one here, Alexander, wanting to eliminate the one that is most likely to kill her. But before she could do so, she was suddenly bombarded with various holy beams of light heading her way, causing her to unleash her sword's holy aura to create a shield to protect herself, but because of the number was too high for her, she simply leapt away from her barrier, which was destroyed. Jean, who has released her illusions, then grabbed her great sword and then leapt towards her, while also sending in aura slashes towards her, with Byleth responding by creating footholds made out of aura and then jumping and spinning to dodge the slashes, with her moving towards Jean. When the two met, a holy beam of light intercepted their path, causing Byleth to pause for a moment, with Jean capitalizing on fully knowing who is sending in this beams of holy energy. She then pushed forward before sending in an aura-enhanced sword and then performed an overhead slash towards Byleth, who reacted and enhanced her fist and then grabbing the blade and then kicking her stomach towards the ones assisting her. Beatrice and Eponia seeing this, immediately slowed her down, with Beatrice healing and placing a barrier around her, while Eponia continued to openly fire with orbs of energy instead and then sending towards Byleth. Byleth, who saw the orbs, then turned towards Man, who was now sitting down with Seal, eating and drinking with him, while also critiquing their battle. Seeing this, she could only sigh in disappointment. I see, so I overreacted. And here I thought these individuals are here to kill Lord Tempest, and I would have the ability to show my skill. Byleth couldn't help but be disappointed since after all, she wanted to experience how to fight with opponents that was aiming to kill her after all. She was in a stage of a warrior that wants to take a journey to fight other strong individuals to grow and adapt and get stronger. In other words, she is currently in the stage that she wants to go out in the world. A stage that Seal is currently in as well. With that, she then decided to use Pendragon sword style to end the battle without serious injuries. With that she then breathe out and then breathe in, gathering and absorbing the energies around her, the earth, the air and the water in the atmosphere. She then refined her own energy to the utmost of her abilities and then activated her sword's holy aura to refine its holy nature and have it be assimilated with her own magical energy, which is enhanced with her absorbing the world's energies around her. With that she then flawlessly slashed in all directions, horizontal, vertical, front, behind, left, right, up and down. It was a fast motion that the girls couldn't react to, and before they could even do anything or say anything or even see anything, the orbs that flew towards her was destroyed completely, and then them seeing black with them going unconscious when Byleth hit the trio with the flat side of her sword. But her movements didn't stop at all, for her blade then concentrated its accumulated speed and strength and then thrust towards Alexander, who only sweat dropped seeing the direction of the attack. Damn brat. With that, Alexander then pulled out a single bayonet and then tightened his right arm to its limits, using his aura to strengthen the blade and sharpened it. He then used one of the 6 exorcist sacred arts, Iron Body, to strengthen his own body. With that he then intercepted the blade with his own slashed, with the residuals of the attack traveling in fast speeds towards Byleth, who only unleashed all of her energy to create a dome around herself to block against it. Seal, seeing this, couldn't help but scoff at Alexander. Why prepare for such a strike? With your level of mastery over combat and your own general stage as well, you could have just as easily stopped it even without resorting to using one of the 6 exorcist sacred arts, you know. Seal couldn't help but think of this as overkill. The 6 exorcist sacred arts, or simply put 6 arts that the church decided to create, with them wanting to create a fighting style around the 6 to be able to take on supernatural entities even more powerful than themselves. The origin of their creation is back in the 11th century, with the arts merely being a part of the battle-will arts of combat, with the church merely choosing 6 of them to enhance to the very limits, coming to believe in the notion of just focusing their efforts on 6 arts to reach its absolute peak to show great performance. And what they believed in was correct. With the introduction of said arts, they were able to take on supernatural entities quite easily compared to before, while also showing that their own version of said arts was very much better as well. With Seal himself also coming to believe on it, as well as being quite powerful arts to learn and mastered as well, with him not really using it as well, with his own arts and martial arts being much better overall. Alexander, hearing his words, couldn't help but chuckle a little. It's fine, it's better for her to think that she is almost as strong as me, since after all, she wouldn't just come over here to strike again, coming to view me as being her equal and all. To this, Seal couldn't help but feel like his reasons was convoluted, since to him it is just better to end the fight with absolute strength if one is capable of it, to just show how unmatched his opponents are compared to himself. Well, that mentality must have been formed because of my time with Thor though. What would Mother think of that mentality of mine? Byleth, who has destroyed her dome, was perfectly fine with her not getting injured from the attack just now, which was thanks to her putting up a barrier fast enough to survive the attack. To this she then walked towards the girls and then grabbed them one by one, before going towards her lord and the master of this women. When she arrived, she couldn't help but give the man a stink eye, causing him to chuckle a little, and then dropped down the women to the ground and then walked towards Ciel's and then sat down as well. Lord Tempest, is the show good for you? Byleth asked, wanting to know what he felt about her performance just now. To this, Ciel then recalled the battle for a moment, before stopping at the arts that Byleth showed last. With that he then turned towards her. That art that you showed, what was it? To this question, Byleth thought for a moment before answering. It's an art that I'm trying to make. It's still in the testing phase though, so I haven't made a name for it yet, she answered honestly, not really seeing anything wrong with it. To this, Ciel could only nod before giving his review about the technique. The art is very powerful, even when it is only in the testing phase. I presumed you created it to take out the fodder and destroying magic and other things surrounding you, yes? To this Byleth nodded. Yes, my lord, I created it for that purpose, but right now I am stuck on how to improve it. It's slow to the point that even that man could react to it without the use of anything enhancing him, so I am sure that most individuals near my level would be able to react to it, or even those that truly specialized in speed would be able to react to it even if they're weaker than me. That was the problem for the technique. She has tried to learn new styles of weapons to try to find ways to fix this issues, even trying in various energy manipulation arts to try to fasten her strikes even if a little bit, but even so she couldn't truly find anything that could help her at all. To this, Ciel then brought out his hand to her, causing her to look at him confused on his gesture. Give me your sword. I teach you how to do the art at its peak. Huh? Byleth was dumbfounded by what she just heard, but gave her sword away, wanting to see what he meant, while Alexander only let out a confused sound wanting to know what Seal meant, but Seal didn't elaborate it further and just went to the field. With that, he then stretched his body for a moment, before sighing, "This should be it." With that he exhaled and then inhaled all of the nearby energies around him. From the air, earth and water, with him deciding to absorb as much as Byleth did, wanting to show that it was in the execution of the technique and skill that made the difference, but considering that he didn't have an ounce of magical energy, just holy energy, he decided to forego and just went straight to refining the holy energy of the sword in his hands. With that he then directed all of the energies that he has absorbed to the sword itself. And before he decided to slash, he then sealed his current strength down to that of Byleth's level of strengthened. With that he then transferred the energies to his blade. With that he then flawlessly slashed in all directions. Horizontal, vertical, front, behind, left, right, up and down. Then suddenly, the sword's trajectory changes once, twice, thrice, and it just kept increasing. The duo seeing this couldn't help but become pale, especially Byleth, who couldn't help but just go to the ground, crying a bit. "Why, I trained in it. Created it. Sob. Why is he even better in my art?" She couldn't help but asked, with her witnessing the peak of her art in the hands of someone else other than herself. But despite her pride being broken, she didn't stop looking at it and just continued to look and see what he has done to it, since after all this was a lesson for her. Alexander seeing the move, couldn't help but be shocked. He has felt it as well. Just before CL's slashed, he sealed his physical capabilities to be the same as Byleth, causing him to understand just how significant of a jump it was. "Shit. Even that would be fatal to me if it is used against me," Alexander concluded, seeing the beginning and end of the technique itself. It was simply put, a very terrifying technique. Flexibility. More than that, he has fused together other weapon styles. Even weapons that isn't compatible to the sword is fused to achieve this level of skill. Byleth absent-mindedly thought, with Seal stopping the technique entirely, while absent-mindedly looking down on the blade on his hand, before walking towards the duo of starstruck and shocked audience. "Byleth, that's how the technique should be done," Seal told Byleth, who only nodded slowly at what Seal said to her, to the point that she didn't even process what he said. Alexander, recovering from the shock, then thought back to the technique that was shown to him and then questioned Seal. What's the name of the technique, Seal?" Why me? Isn't it Byleth's job to name it herself?" Byleth hearing the conversation then butted in. "Yeah, Lord Tempest, I think it would be good for you to name it yourself, since you completed it before me after all," she said to Seal, who couldn't truly find anything from that logic. But he did still try to give the responsibility to her still though. "Yes, I'm the one that completed it, but you were the one that made the foundation for said skill, so I still think that you would be the one who named it, or have some part of the name creation," he reasoned with the girl, who only shook her head. "I don't truly mind you naming the technique at all, since you are the much better warrior that I am, so I think it would be good for you to name it yourself." Byleth doesn't truly want to name it, coming to believe that her own naming sense would just diminish the technique's power. Because of that she decided to just dump that part of the task to him, since she does believe that he would be able to come up with a name for it even better than her at least. Seal hearing that, couldn't help but just sighed, seeing the determined look on Byleth's face. With that he then thought for a name for it, but strangely enough he couldn't think of a name for it. No, it's more apt to say that he could only think of one name for it. Realizing this, Seal couldn't help but just raise his eyebrow at that. Despite his numerous attempts to come up with a name, all of his ways would just come back to the first name that he thought befitted the technique, and seeing that he couldn't think of any other name, he decided to go along with it. Void Collapse. World of Thousand Blooming Changes. That was the name that sticked out to him. It was a weird feeling that he couldn't shake, but it felt right to him when he first used the technique. The others hearing it, couldn't help but be impressed with the name of the technique, with Byleth nodding, quite happy of the name that was picked for her technique. "I am quite happy of the Lord's name for my art." After some time, Seal after eating dinner then went to his personal room and then slept, but unlike before where he normally just sleeps peacefully without any dreams or nightmare. Void Collapse. World of 1,000 Blooming Changes. As if in courtesy to those who would soon perish, he generously revealed it to the public for the first time. It was a terrifying technique, The trajectory of the sword changed in thousands upon thousands of directions, slicing through the enemy with elusive movements. Its power was impeccable, and it scattered the target like a flower. It was out of the realm of human reach and seemed impossible for even a demon lord. The toughness of a true dragon, combined with the flexibility of slime, must have enabled him to achieve such an incomprehensible sword technique. Gasp! CL's body shot out the bed, with him silently gasping for a second before calming down. He then turned around the room, like he was expecting to be in a battlefield of some kind. But what greeted him was a wonderfully created bedroom, which confused for a moment, before realizing something once again. Why was I expecting to be in a battlefield? I just finished having dinner with the Pendragons and giving some pointers for Byleth to use her arts better. He thought before bringing up his hand to his face before laying down once more, true dragon. Slime. What kind of dream was that? He thought for a moment, before going back to sleep, and this time, there was no dream that came his way again.